Have you ever looked at a photograph, yellowed and cracked, and wondered what storm of life separated the people in it? What if one of those faces was yours, and the person holding the picture, a mother, had been waiting for you for 50 years? Not just waiting, but searching, her entire life narrowed down to a single desperate hope: to find the children she was forced to give away, and the ones who were stolen from her. This is the story of Nguyen Thi Mai. It's a story of a choice that no mother should ever have to make, a betrayal that echoed for half a century, and a love that refused to die, even in the darkest alley in Saigon. The sun doesn't really visit Ban Nguyen Thi Mai's room. It tries. Around noon, a thin, dusty blade of light might slice through the gloom, briefly illuminating the gray concrete wall, but it never reaches the floor. Her room, if you could call it that, is a 10-square-meter box, buried so deep in the labyrinth of District 8 that the city of Ho Chi Minh feels like a rumor. The air here is a permanent resident, thick and damp, carrying a cocktail of smells from the nearby canal, a black, sluggish river of pollution, and the ever-present odor of fermented fish sauce and cooking charcoal from 100 other tiny rooms pressed up against hers. There is no such thing as quiet. The thin brick walls are conductors for the alley's symphony. A neighbor's television blaring a soap opera, the tinny screech of karaoke from 2 houses down, the constant angry buzz of motorbikes, and the sharp, percussive sounds of arguments. Peace is a luxury that doesn't live here. Mai, at 82, rises before the first light, long before the city truly wakes. Her body is a testament to a life of hard labor, frail, but with a wiry, unyielding strength. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace, each movement practiced over decades. Her first act is to fold her mat. It's a thin, woven thing that does little to soften the concrete floor. She shares this small space with her niece, Thu. Thu, 30 years old, lies on a narrow cot in the corner, her body a permanent, painful twist of severe cerebral palsy. Her limbs are rigid and uncooperative, but her eyes are alive. They are bright and clear, and they follow Mai's every move, a beacon of intelligence and love trapped in a silent prison. "Did you sleep well, my girl?" Mai whispers, her voice a low, gravelly rasp from years of disuse. Thu can only blink, a slow, deliberate movement that Mai has learned to interpret as yes. The room's single luxury, a small electric burner, hums to life. Mai boils a small pot of rice porridge, the steam adding to the room's humidity. She slides one arm under Thu's back and the other under her head, lifting her niece with a practiced, gentle strength. The process of feeding is slow, an act of pure patience. She spoons the warm congee, white and thin, into Thu's mouth, her own gnarled hand steady. She catches the bits that inevitably spill, wiping Thu's chin with a soft cloth. This is her first and most important task of the day. Thu is her sister's child, left orphaned and immobile. Mai has been her arms, her legs, and her voice for 30 years. She is her anchor and her heaviest, most beloved burden. After Thu is cleaned, changed, and settled back on the cot, Mai prepares for her own work. She dons her conical hat, the non-la, its surface stained and softened by years of sun and rain. She retrieves her cart. It's a simple, homemade contraption. 2 old bicycle wheels wobbling on a bent axle attached to a splintered wooden frame. When she pulls it, the wheels let out a high-pitched metallic squeak, a sound as familiar to this alley as the call of the bread vendor. She steps out into the gray pre-dawn gloom. Her back is already bent, not just from age, but from the weight of her life. She is ready to scan the night's mountains of garbage, the refuse of a city that has forgotten her, searching for the treasure others throw away. Plastic bottles, aluminum cans, scraps of cardboard. Each piece is a few more jong. Each piece is a coin toward Thu's medicine, toward the rent for this damp, dark room. Her neighbors, rising to start their own days, see her. She is a ghost in the morning mist, a fixture of the alley. "Greetings, Ba Mai," a woman calls, balancing a tray of noodles. Mai nods, a small, dignified incline of her head. They respect her, this tiny old woman who asks for nothing and endures everything. But they pity her, too. They see her devotion to Thu, a devotion that borders on martyrdom. They whisper about it, how she has sacrificed her entire life for the girl. They don't know the truth. They don't know that Thu is not the only child she carries in her heart. They don't know about the others. They don't know that as her gnarled hands, swollen with arthritis, deftly sort plastic from filth, her mind is not in District 8. It is 50 years in the past, in a bright, sunlit house filled with the laughter of children who didn't know her language, but knew her heart. She works for hours. The sun, which avoided her room, is now a relentless tropical hammer, beating down on her. The heat rises from the pavement in visible waves. Sweat drips from her brow, tracing paths through the grime on her face. She feels a pang of hunger, a gnawing emptiness in her stomach, but she ignores it. There is a small, sticky rice cake wrapped in a banana leaf in her pocket. It's for later. Or maybe she will save it and split it with Thu. Thu likes the sweetness. Her thoughts are a constant looping rhythm, a mantra of survival. Thu's medicine, the rent, the leaky patch in the ceiling that drips brown water when it rains, the cost of rice. In the late afternoon, she pushes her cart, now piled high with plastic bags full of her haul, to the local recycling depot. The cart squeaks in protest, the wheels threatening to buckle. The owner, a gruff man with a cigarette permanently attached to his lower lip, barely looks at her. He heaves the bags onto a large industrial scale, his eyes squinting at the numbers. 35,000, he mutters, reaching into a cash box. He hands her a few crumpled, dirty bills. 35,000 jong, less than $2 American. A full day's work, from before dawn until the sun begins to set, for less than $2. Mai doesn't argue. She doesn't complain. She nods, thanks him with the same quiet dignity, and clutches the money tightly in her fist. It is just enough. It is enough for porridge for a few more days, and maybe a small packet of painkillers for her aching joints. She pushes the empty, squeaking cart back through the alleys as dusk settles, painting the sky a bruised purple. The alley is even louder now. The karaoke has started in earnest. The arguments are more frequent. The smell of cooking is overwhelming. She returns to her room, to Thu, who greets her with the same bright-eyed, silent gaze. She prepares her niece for the night, washing her limbs, changing her clothes, massaging the stiff, unyielding muscles. As she works, she hums an old lullaby, a tune from a life long past. It's a song she hasn't sung for her own children in half a century. Thu coos, a soft, guttural sound, the only one she can make. It's her sound of contentment. Later, much later, when the alley has finally quieted to a low hum, Mai sits on her mat. Under the weak, flickering light of a single bare bulb, she pulls a small, dented tin box from under Thu's cot. The box once held sweet biscuits. Now it holds her entire past. She opens it. Inside, there is only one item. A photograph, its edges blurred and yellow. The face is faded by time and her own touch. It's a picture of 6 smiling children. They are beautiful. They are mixed race, with their mother's deep, dark eyes and hair that ranges from black to light brown. They are her children. She traces their faces, one by one, with a trembling finger. John, Leon, Michael, Dung, Han, Anne. "Where are you?" she whispers into the humid night air, the question she has asked every night for 50 years. "Where are you? Do you ever think of me?" Thu watches her from the cot, a silent, knowing witness to a grief that has no end, a grief that lives in a small tin box. The year was 1971, and the house. The house was a different world. It wasn't a 10-square-meter box in a flooded alley. It was a villa, a beautiful, rented villa on Nguyen Hue Boulevard, a wide, tree-lined street that felt like the very center of the universe. The air wasn't damp and polluted. It was light and airy, scented with jasmine that climbed the courtyard walls and the faint, sophisticated smell of diesel from the passing Citroëns and motorbikes. Sunlight didn't just visit, it lived in that house. It streamed through tall, shuttered windows, splashing across the cool, patterned tile floors, illuminating the high ceilings and the dark, heavy wooden furniture. This was Mai's life. It felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. Arthur was the architect of this dream. He was an American civil engineer, working for a large company, building bridges and roads. He was a kind man, a good man, 12 years older than Mai, with a loud, sudden laugh that could startle a room and eyes that were endlessly gentle. He didn't treat her like a conquest, a temporary convenience in a foreign country, which was so common. He treated her as a wife. He adored her. He called her his Saigon Rose, a name that made her blush every time. For Mai, then in her early 30s, this stability was a miracle. Her past had been one of hardship. A first failed marriage to a local man had left her with nothing but bruises and bad memories. Arthur. Arthur was her safe harbor. He was the calm in the middle of a storm. Their life was a whirlwind, not of parties or official functions, but of simple, domestic joys. Sunday mornings were their ritual. They would walk to the Ben Thanh market, their hands linked, the children trailing behind. Arthur, tall and conspicuously American, would try his broken, heavily accented Vietnamese, making the old women selling vegetables laugh their beetle-stained laughs. He would buy too much of everything, his arms full of dragon fruit and rambutans, of baguettes still warm from the oven. Mai would cook. She filled the house with the smells of home. Her home. The complex, aromatic steam of pho simmering for hours, the sizzle of garlic and lemongrass. She even learned to bake bread, a skill she picked up just for him, to make his world feel a little closer to hers. Their home was a perfect, seamless blend of two worlds. The children came quickly, one after another. First, the twins, John and Leon. John, with his father's light hair and his mother's serious expression. Leon, a perfect miniature of Mai. Then came Michael, all energy and laughter. They were beautiful children, a stunning mix of two continents, with their father's fair skin and their mother's deep, dark, almond-shaped eyes. The house was noisy. It was filled with the sounds of their small feet running on the tile, their high-pitched laughter, and their easy, unconscious bilingual chatter, slipping between English and Vietnamese in the same sentence. Mai felt a sense of completeness, a profound, bone-deep happiness she had never ever thought possible. She wasn't alone in this. Ba Ut was there from the beginning. She was a distant relative of Mai's, a widow from the countryside in the Mekong Delta. She was quiet, almost invisible at times, but incredibly efficient. She ran the household like a general, silent and firm, and she was wonderful with the children. They adored her. They called her Ma'ut, or Little Mother, a title of deep affection. She was the one who bathed them, who sang them to sleep, who managed the kitchen and the cleaning. She allowed Mai to simply be a mother, to enjoy her children without the crushing weight of domestic drudgery. "You are too good to us, Ut," Mai would often say, pressing extra money into her hand, money Arthur had given her for the market. "We are family," Ba-Ut would reply, her face placid, unreadable. She would take the money without a change in expression. Mai loved to stand on the balcony in the late afternoon, the air cooling, and watch her family in the small courtyard below. Arthur would be home from work, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up. He'd be playing with the children, tossing Michael in the air, who would shriek with delighted terror. Arthur would pretend to be a giant, chasing John and Lean around the frangipani tree. "We'll have a big family, Mai," he'd shout up to her, his face flushed and happy. 6, 7, 10 kids. Mai would laugh, her hand resting on her growing belly. She was pregnant again, with their 4th. She would look at her husband, her children, her beautiful home, and feel a profound, unshakable happiness. She believed, with all her heart, that it would last forever. This period was an idyll, a perfect sun-drenched bubble of peace. The war, of course, was always there. It was the backdrop to their entire lives, a low, constant hum in the background. They'd hear the stories, see the soldiers in the streets, the tension that sometimes gripped the city. But it felt distant, something that happened to other people, in the jungles and the countryside. Not to them, not in their bright, airy house on the boulevard. Arthur's job was secure. Their children were healthy. Their love was strong. Mai had no reason to believe the foundation of their perfect world was built on sand, that it was all about to be washed away. Sometimes, though, Arthur would grow quiet. It would happen late at night, after the children were asleep. He'd be reading letters from home, letters that took weeks to arrive, his brow furrowed, a tightness around his mouth. "What is it, my love?" Mai would ask, coming up behind him, massaging his shoulders. "It's nothing, honey," he'd say, forcing a smile, crumbling the letter in his fist. "Just office politics. You know, bureaucracy." He would pull her into his lap and kiss her, changing the subject, asking about the baby, about the market, about anything else. Mai didn't press. She trusted him. She trusted their life. She didn't know that office politics was a euphemism for evacuation plans, and that the letters from home were warnings. She had no idea that the bubble was about to burst, and the sound it made would tear her world apart. The air in Saigon changed in March of 1975. It was a physical shift, a change in pressure that you could feel on your skin. The hope that had filled the house on Nguyen Hue Boulevard, the scent of jasmine, the sound of laughter, it was all gone. It was replaced by a thick, suffocating fear that coated everything like a layer of ash. The jasmine scent was choked out by the acrid smell of burning documents. All over the city, consulates and corporate offices were destroying their files, and the smoke hung in the humid air, a constant reminder that something was ending. The sounds of children's laughter were drowned out by a new, terrifying sound, the distant, rhythmic, inescapable whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of helicopters. They were always there now, day and night, a soundtrack of panic. The city was not just on the verge of collapse, it was in a free-fall. Arthur came home one evening, late. Mai had been waiting for him, the food cold on the table. He didn't come through the door with his usual loud, "I'm home." He walked in slowly, and when he stepped into the light, Mai's stomach dropped. His face, usually so ruddy and cheerful, was pale, drawn, and slick with sweat. He didn't kiss her. He didn't ask about the children. He just stood in the middle of their beautiful living room, looking like a ghost. "We have to go, Mai," he said, his voice flat. "Now, tonight." Mai's world stopped. She was 8 months pregnant with their 6th child, a heavy, uncomfortable weight in her belly. Her body felt slow, anchored. "What do you mean, go?" she asked, her voice trembling, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "Go where?" "Home, America," he said, finally looking at her. His eyes were wide, desperate. "My company is evacuating all American personnel. All of us. A plane is waiting at Tan Son Nhat. We have to be on it." He grabbed her arms, his fingers digging in. "Pack 1 bag. Only what we can carry." "1 bag, Mai. Do you understand?" But Mai couldn't move. Her mind was spinning. Go? Just leave? It didn't make sense. "Arthur, I can't," she said, the words coming out in a choked whisper. "My father. I just got a message from Cantho. He's gravely ill. He's dying, Arthur. I am his only caregiver. I have to go to him." Arthur let go of her arms and stepped back, running his hands through his hair. He looked, for the first time, like a man completely broken. "He'll die anyway," he yelled. It was the first time he had ever raised his voice to her, and it felt like a slap. He saw the look on her face, and his expression crumpled. He grabbed her arms again, but gently this time, shaking her slightly, as if to wake her from a nightmare. "Mai, honey, you don't understand. They are coming. The North Vietnamese. They will be here in days, maybe hours. If we stay, if I stay, they will take me. I'm an American. I built roads for the other side. They'll put me in a camp. Or worse." He looked past her, toward the hallway where the children were asleep. "And you? What do you think they'll do to you? The wife of an American? And the children?" He pointed to their 5 children, John and Lane, Michael, and the 2 younger ones, Dung and Han, who had been woken by the shouting and were now huddled in the doorway, their faces pale with a terror they couldn't comprehend. "What do you think happens to them?" The argument lasted all night. It wasn't just an argument. It was a desperate, circular battle of love and duty, of 2 lives pulling in opposite, impossible directions. "I cannot leave my father to die alone," she wept, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot leave my homeland. This is my home. My family is here." He was just as resolute, his voice cracking with a fear she had never heard. "I cannot leave my children. I will not leave my children in a country that's about to tear itself apart." By the time the first gray light of dawn filtered through the windows, a terrible, heartbreaking, soul-shattering compromise had been reached. It was a choice that wasn't a choice at all. It was a vivisection. They would split the family. They would tear their own lives in 2. Arthur would take the 3 eldest children, John, Leon, and Michael. They were on his American paperwork, listed as his dependents. He could get them out. The U.S. government was prioritizing Americans and their immediate documented kin. Mai would stay. She would stay with the 2 youngest, Dung and Han, and the baby she carried. She would go to her father in Cantho, see him one last time. "As soon as I'm settled, I'll send for you," Arthur promised, his voice choked, holding her face in his hands. "This is temporary. It's just until the dust settles. I swear it, Mai. I swear on my life. I will move heaven and earth to bring you and the children to me." He was crying, and she was crying. They were just two people, trapped by history, making a bargain with a future that had no intention of keeping its promises. The drive to Tan Son Nhat Airport was a blur, a fever dream of chaos and checkpoints. The streets were jammed with people, all running, all carrying their lives in small bags. The air was electric with panic. At the gate, it was a sea of terrified faces. They said their goodbyes amidst the shouting of soldiers and the roar of planes. Mai clung to her 3 older children, her heart feeling like it was being physically ripped from her chest. She knelt, her pregnant belly making it difficult. "Be good for your father," she sobbed, kissing their faces, trying to memorize them. "Mommy loves you. Never forget Mommy. Never." John, the oldest at 7, was trying to be brave, his face stoic, his lower lip trembling. Leon and Michael just cried, their small hands clinging to her shirt, not understanding why she was letting them go. "I don't want to go, Mama. Don't make me go," Leon screamed, and a piece of Mai died right there. Arthur had to pull them away. He pulled her into a desperate, final kiss, a kiss that tasted of salt and fear. "I love you. I will find you. I promise." He pushed through the crowd, pulling the 3 children with him, Michael under one arm. Mai stood there, her hands on her pregnant belly, her 2 youngest children, Dong and Han, clinging to her legs, their own faces streaked with confused tears. She stood and watched, a numbness spreading through her body, turning her limbs to lead. She watched until the crowd of people swallowed them, until their light hair and his tall frame disappeared into the mass of humanity pushing toward the planes. She had just torn her own family in half. She had saved 3 and stayed with 2. She turned slowly. She felt Dung's small 5-year-old hand slip into hers. "Where did Papa go, Mama?" he asked, his small voice piping up in the chaos. "Where did John and Leon go?" Mai couldn't answer. She couldn't speak. She just tightened her grip on his hand and Han's and began to walk. She walked out of the airport, away from the planes, away from her husband, away from half of her heart. She just walked, step by step, into a future that was a terrifying, blank and silent void. The city's name changed. Saigon became Ho Chi Minh City, but the hardship wasn't new. It just had a different name. After 1975, life for Mai was not just a struggle. It was a daily humiliation. The new regime was in place, and she was a pariah. She was the Meo, a derogatory term for the wife of an American, a collaborator, a remnant of the old corrupt world. Her neighbors, the ones who had once looked at her with envy in her big house on the boulevard, now looked at her with contempt. Or worse, they looked right through her. She lost the big house, of course. It was seized, reappropriated for a government official. She was forced into a small, squalid hovel in a forgotten part of the city, the precursor to her eventual room in District 8. The money Arthur had managed to leave her, a thick wad of piastres, was worthless paper overnight. The currency had changed. The economy had collapsed. She sold her jewelry, piece by piece, the gold and gems Arthur had given her in their happy life. She sold them for handfuls of rice. Then she sold her clothes, the beautiful silk audais. Then she sold the furniture. Soon there was nothing left to sell. She was left with only her 3 children, Dong, Han, and the new baby, Anne, who had been born in the chaos, a tiny, perfect girl who had never known a father or a house with sunlight. Mai's only anchor in this new, hostile world was one person, Ba Ut. The nanny, the quiet, efficient woman from the countryside, had not fled. She, too, had nowhere to go. She clung to Mai, her loyalty seeming absolute. "We are family," she repeated, the same words she had spoken in the grand villa. But now they had a different resonance. They weren't just words. They were a lifeline. "I will never leave you, my dear," she promised. And Mai believed her. Ba'ut was her rock. While Mai went out to find any menial work she could, washing clothes for neighbors, scrubbing floors at the local market, her hands raw and bleeding, Ba'ut watched the three children. She was a shield, protecting Mai from the worst of the world's scorn, and protecting the children from the dangers of a mother's desperation. But the world's scorn was hard to escape. The children were beautiful, but their faces were a curse. Their light eyes, their pale skin, their mixed heritage, it marked them. They were Kon Lai, children of the dust. They were the living, breathing evidence of the enemy. They were bullied relentlessly. They were denied food at distribution points, pushed to the back of the line. They were called names that Mai had to scrub from their memories at night. Mai's heart broke into 1,000 new pieces every time Dung came home with a split lip, or Han had her doll stolen. "Why do they hate us, Mama?" Dung would ask, his eyes so like his father's, full of a pain no child should know. She had no answer. She could only hold them, her heart aching with a toxic combination of love, rage, and profound helplessness. This was their life for 3 years. A slow, grinding daily descent into hopelessness. Then, one evening in 1978, Ba'ut came to Mai. She had a strange, intense look in her eyes. She sat Mai down in their small, dark room, the children asleep on a mat in the corner. "I have a way out," Ba'ut said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "Not for us, Mai. For them," she explained. Her own sister, the one who had also married an American, was now settled in California. "She can sponsor us," Ba'ut said. "She can get us papers." Mai's heart, long dormant, gave a painful, hopeful flicker. "America? We can go to America? To find Arthur?" Ba'ut shook her head, her face serious. "No, Mai, not you, not me. They won't take us, but there are programs, humanitarian programs. They are getting the children out." She leaned in closer. "My sister can help them. They can go to America. They can go to school, be safe. They won't be Mio there. They won't be children of the dust. They will just be children." The idea was a seed, planted in the barren soil of Mai's desperation. A life where her children weren't despised. A life where they had a future. It was a tantalizing, agonizing thought. "But how?" Mai asked, her voice shaking. "I have no papers. I have no husband. I have no money." "That is the trap," Ba'ut explained, her voice dropping even lower. "You don't need them. I will be the one. You will sign papers. You will give me legal guardianship." Mai recoiled. "Give you my children." "Just temporary," Ba'ut insisted, grabbing Mai's hand. "Just on paper. It's a formality so I can take them on the boat, so I can register them in the camps. I will take them as my children, or as my nieces and nephew. When I get there, I promise you, I will find Arthur. Or I will find my sister, and we will send for you. It's the only way, Mai, the only way to save them. Otherwise, what future do they have here?" Mai was torn. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like the airport all over again, another piece of her heart being carved away. "I don't know, Oot. I don't know." But then she looked. She looked at Dung, now 8, sleeping on the mat. He was so thin, his ribs visible, and he had a persistent cough. She looked at Han and at baby An, her perfect, innocent face. What future did they have here? A life of picking scraps? Of being spat on? Of shame? If you love them, you will let them go, Ba'ut whispered, her voice kind, logical, and firm. It was the whisper of a savior. It sealed the bargain. A week later, Mai was in a dusty, crowded government office. She stood in front of a stern-faced official, a stack of papers in front of her. The papers were in formal, legalistic Vietnamese that she couldn't read. Ba'ut was at her side, holding her hand, guiding her. Just sign here, my dear. It's just the travel authorization. Mai's hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She signed her name. Then the official pushed an ink pad toward her. She dipped her thumb in the black ink and pressed it next to her signature, a permanent, dark stain. She had effectively, legally, given her 3 children away. You are doing the right thing, Mai, Ba'ut said, squeezing her hand. You are a good mother. You are saving them. The day they left was quiet, almost surreal. There was no chaotic airport. They took a bus to the port, a grim, industrial harbor. Mai dressed the children in their best, cleanest clothes, clothes that were still threadbare. She held baby An so tight, her arms ached, trying to memorize the feel of her daughter's weight, the smell of her skin. She knelt on the dirty dock in front of Dung, now 8. She grabbed his small shoulders. You are the man now. You must protect your sisters. Do you understand me? He nodded, his face serious, trying to be the man she asked him to be. And never, ever forget me. Do you hear me, Dung? Never forget your mama. He nodded again, his eyes filling with tears. She kissed them all. One last time. The 3 children, Dung, Han, and little An, walked up the gangplank of a small, rusty ship, each of them holding one of Ba'ut's hands. They were small, so small against the huge ship. They didn't look back. Maybe Ba'ut told them not to. Mai stood on the dock. She stood as the ship's horn blasted. She stood as it pulled away from the dock, the churning water a dirty brown. She stood until the ship was a speck on the horizon, until it disappeared into the South China Sea. She had no tears left. She had saved her children. That's what she told herself, over and over, as she walked away from the port, completely and totally alone. She had saved them. The first year was a special kind of hell. The silence. Mai would wake up in her empty room, the silence of physical pressing ache against her chest. She would automatically start to boil porridge, reaching for 4 bowls, only to have her hand stop, trembling in midair. It was just for one. The room was too quiet. The absence of their breathing, their small coughs, their whispered nighttime arguments, was a sound louder than any karaoke. She waited. She went to the central post office every week, her heart pounding with a desperate, fragile hope. She would ask the clerks, "Are you sure? A letter from America? From California? Can you check again?" The answer was always no, nothing. "The mail is slow," she told herself. "It's a long way. They are just getting settled in the camps. They are finding a place to live." Months turned into a year. The silence stretched. 2 years, 5. The silence from Ba'ut was absolute. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket. The hope that had been a flicker began to die, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. What if the boat hadn't made it? What if they were at the bottom of the sea? This thought was so terrible she would have to sit, her head between her knees, just to breathe. Then, another blow. a message came from Can Tho. Her father, the man she had sacrificed half her family to see, had passed away. She had made it to him in 1975, and he had been delirious with fever, not even recognizing her. He had clung to life for years, and now he was gone. She went for the funeral, a gaunt, hollowed-out woman. She buried him. Her grief a complicated, layered thing, compounded by the absence of her children. She was truly, officially, alone in the world. She returned to Ho Chi Minh City, a ghost in her own life. She couldn't afford her small hovel anymore. She found the room in District 8, the 10-square-meter box, the only place that would take her, the only place she could afford. This, she thought, is where I will die. In 1990, a new tragedy and a new, agonizing purpose. Her younger sister, who had married a man who drank and hit, died. She died of a simple fever, her body too weak and too worn out to fight. She left behind a child, a 2-year-old daughter, Thu. Thu had been born different. She was born with twisted limbs, a body that wouldn't obey her, and a mind that was locked inside. Cerebral palsy. The father, a cruel man, didn't want her. "She is a burden," he sneered, already looking for his next bottle. "She is bad luck." Mai, who had lost 6 children, looked at the small, helpless, perfectly formed child. She picked her up. "There are no burdens," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. She took the baby home. Raising Thu gave Mai a reason to wake up, but it was a reason that was backbreaking. Thu required 24-hour care. She had to be fed, bathed, turned, massaged. As Mai's body aged, as her own joints stiffened with arthritis and her back bent, Thu's needs only grew. She became heavier. Her limbs grew more rigid. This new love was fierce and total, a lioness's love, but it was also a chain. It rooted her to the tiny room in District 8. It chained her to the squeaking scrap cart. There was no more time to go to the post office. There was no money for bus fare to search. There was only Thu, and the daily grinding work of keeping them both alive. When Vietnam and the United States re-established diplomatic relations in the mid-90s, the old, dead hope flickered again. It was a painful, dangerous feeling. She saved for months, forgoing her own medicine to pay a letter writer in the market. She sat with the young man, dictating her story, her hands clenched in her lap. She addressed the letter to Arthur, with his old company's name, in a city she couldn't pronounce. Months later, it was returned. A red stamp on the front. Address unknown. She saved again. She sent another, this time to Ba Yut's sister's last known address in California, an address she had memorized like a prayer. It, too, returned. No such person. She began her search in a new way, an analog, desperate way. She took a bus, a long, rattling journey to Ba Yut's home village in the Mekong Delta. The village had changed. The family home she remembered was gone, replaced by a small factory building. The neighbors who remembered the family were old, or dead, or scattered. She finally found one old woman, sitting by the road, chewing betel nut. "Oh, Oot!" the woman cackled, her teeth black. "Oh, she got lucky. She went to America and got rich. We heard she lives in a big house." The old woman spat a stream of red juice onto the dirt. She never sent a jong back, not even for her own mother's grave. The words were a confirmation. Ba Ut had made it. She was rich, and she had forgotten them, or worse, she had chosen to forget. Mai returned to the city. She was no longer just a scrap collector. She was a woman with a mission. She had her original photograph, The one from the tin box, laminated. It was cracked and yellow, but the faces were still visible. She became a familiar, sad sight in the tourist district, around the old cathedral. She would approach foreigners, her hand trembling as she held out the photo. "Have you seen my children?" she would ask, in broken English, or in Vietnamese, pointing. "My children, American, have you seen?" Most people, tourists on holiday, would smile politely, a sad, uncomfortable smile. They would shake their heads, maybe press a few thousand jong into her hand, and walk away quickly, eager to escape the weight of her grief. The decades blurred. The 1990s bled into the 2000s. The city outside her alley transformed at a speed she couldn't comprehend. Skyscrapers of glass and steel pierced the skyline. The streets, once rivers of bicycles, were now choked with luxury cars and high-end motorbikes. But inside Mai's room, time was frozen. It was always 1978. It was always the day of the ship. It was always the day she signed the papers. She began to fear death. It was a new, cold fear, not for herself. She had made peace with her own end. She was afraid for Thu. If she died, who would care for her niece? Who would feed her, clean her, massage her limbs? Thu would be sent to an orphanage, a state institution, where she would be just another burden. And she was afraid for her children. If she died, the truth died with her. Her children, all 6 of them, wherever they were, would live their whole lives believing she hadn't wanted them, believing she had abandoned them or sold them. This thought was more painful than her aching back, more painful than the constant, gnawing hunger. It was the fire that kept her going. It was the one thing that made her get up, day after day, and pull that squeaking cart out into the gloom. She had to find them. She had to tell them the truth. One day, the 21st century found her. It came in the form of a young man named Kang, who navigated the maze of alleys in District 8, stepping over puddles of fetid water, and found her. He wasn't a tourist. He was a new kind of Vietnamese. He carried a smartphone on a gimbal, a small, fuzzy microphone in his hand. He was a vlogger, a storyteller, running a small but growing YouTube channel called Saigon's Hidden Stories. He wasn't looking for glamour or fancy food. He was looking for the people the new, shiny city had left behind. A neighbor, the noodle vendor, had told him about the old woman in the last alley, the one who cares for her niece like a saint, and who talks to an old photograph. He found Mai just as she was every afternoon, sitting on a low plastic stool on her doorstep, washing Thu's clothes in a gray plastic basin. The water was sudsy and dark. He approached her gently, bowing his head in respect. "Bah," he said, using the polite term for grandmother. "My name is Kang. I tell stories. Your neighbor said you have a story to tell." Mai was shy. She was wary. Strangers usually wanted something, or they were officials checking papers. She just nodded, her hands still scrubbing the cloth. He didn't push. He sat on a stool opposite her, the camera off. He just talked. He asked about her life now. Mai, polite and stoic, spoke about Thu. She spoke about the price of cardboard, how it had gone down again. She worried about the leaky roof, with the rainy season coming. To Kang, she was the perfect picture of a poor, resilient, elderly woman. But he knew, from the tremor in her voice, from the way her eyes kept glancing at the darkness of her room, that there was more. He had been told about the photograph. "Bah," he said softly after almost an hour. "The neighbors said you have children. They said you have a photograph." That was the key. The word children. Mai's hands, which had been working tirelessly, stopped. She looked down at the gray water. She was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, she wiped her hands on her apron and stood up. "Come inside." She led him into the small, damp room. Thu was on her cot, watching them with her bright, intelligent eyes. Mai walked over to the cot, bent down, and pulled out the small, dented tin box. It felt like a ritual, like she was opening a tomb. She sat on her mat and hesitantly, her fingers trembling, she opened the lid. She pulled out the faded, laminated picture. "My children," she said, and her voice, which had been so stoic, cracked. It broke. Kang, seeing this, turned on his camera. He didn't put it in her face. He just set it on the small table, letting it observe. He pointed it at the photograph she held in her trembling hands. "Where are they, Ba?" he asked, his voice gentle. And with that simple, direct question, the dam that Mai had built inside herself for 50 years, the one that held back a half-century of grief, guilt, and unspeakable loss, finally broke. It didn't just leak, it shattered. For 50 years she had held this story in, telling it only in whispers to herself in the dark, or in broken fragments to strangers who didn't understand. Now it poured out. She spoke of Arthur, of his kind eyes and his loud laugh. She spoke of the house on the boulevard, the sunlight, the smell of jasmine. She spoke of the fall of Saigon, the helicopters, the terrible, impossible choice. She spoke of the airport, of kissing John, Lien, and Michael goodbye, of the feeling of her family being ripped in two. She spoke of the 3 children she was left with. And then her voice dropped, filled with a shame that was still raw. She spoke of Ba'ut. She spoke of the desperation, the bullying, the poverty. She spoke of the proposal, the temporary papers. She said she was saving them, Mai wept, her face etched with a million wrinkles crumbling. She buried her face in her hands, her small shoulders shaking. She said it was to save them. She said I was a good mother. I gave her my children. I signed the papers. I put my thumb in the ink. I gave them away. This was her breaking point. This was the confession she had needed to make for her entire life. The guilt she had carried, the gnawing, acidic guilt that she, not Ba'ut, not the war, was responsible, was finally laid bare for the world to see. "I just want to tell them," she pleaded, looking directly into the camera lens as if she could see her children's faces there. She was speaking to them, to the world, to God. "I just want to tell them I never stopped loving them. I never wanted to give them away. I'm 82. I don't have much time." She held the photograph up to the camera. "Please," she begged, "find them. Find my children. Just tell them I'm sorry. Tell them their mother is sorry." The interview ended. Kang was visibly shaken. His hands were trembling as he turned off the camera. He was a journalist, but he was also a son. He was speechless. He just sat with her, patting her back as she sobbed. He promised he would do what he could. That night, Kang went home. He didn't edit the video with any flashy graphics or dramatic, manipulative music. He didn't need to. He just let Ba Mai talk. He put a simple translation in English subtitles. He titled the video, "The 50-Year Wait, A Mother's Final Plea to Her 6 Lost Children." He posted it to his YouTube channel and his Facebook page. He went to sleep, not knowing he had just lit a digital fuse that would stretch across the Pacific Ocean. Within 24 hours, the video had 1 million views. Then 2 million. The comments section exploded. It wasn't just Vietnamese people. It was the Vietnamese diaspora, the Viet Kieu, in America, in Australia, in France. People who had their own stories of escape, of lost family, of broken promises. They shared it. They tagged friends. I know this story. My aunt was a Mio. This is my mother's story. Find Ba'ut! Find that wolf! The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Donations began flooding Kang's bank account, which he had linked for her. Small amounts, 50,000 jong, 100,000 jong, earmarked for Ba Mai's roof. But more importantly, the search had begun. People recognized the names. Vietnamese Americans with skills in genealogy, in online sleuthing, in navigating public records, started digging. They had names: John, Lien, Michael, Dung, Han, An. They had a traitor: Ba'ut. The digital hive mind was activated, all focused on this one frail old woman in a dark alley in District 8. It didn't take years. It didn't even take months. It took 2 weeks. The digital hive mind, fueled by a collective sense of justice and fueled by the shared trauma of the diaspora, worked with astonishing speed. A Vietnamese-American genealogist in Houston, Texas, a woman who specialized in reuniting families separated by the war, saw the video. She cross-referenced Vietnamese adoption and refugee records from the late 1970s with California public records. She found her, a UT Nguyen, Ba'ut. She found her listed as the legal guardian for 3 Vietnamese children who arrived in 1978. And then she found one of the children, Dung, who now went by David Lam. The last name was from a marriage, or maybe a name he chose. They found his business address. He owned an auto body shop in San Jose, California, the heart of the Vietnamese-American community. Kang received the email, his hands shaking. He verified the information. It was him. The age matched. The location matched. He found a phone number. He called, and a man answered, his English abrupt. Kang, speaking Vietnamese, explained who he was, that he was calling from Vietnam. He said he had news about the man's birth mother. There was a long silence. The man, David, agreed to a video call. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock, your time," he said, and hung up. Kang arranged everything. He brought his high-quality laptop to Mai's small room. He had to gently ask the neighbors to turn down their music, to keep the alley quiet. He explained that Ba Mai was going to speak to her son. The alley, for the first time in its history, went silent. Neighbors, the noodle vendor, the motorbike taxi driver, all gathered outside the open door, watching, holding their breath. Mai was trembling. She hadn't slept. Kang had helped her comb her thin gray hair. She was wearing her one good ao ba ba, a soft brown silk tunic. "What do I say, Kang?" she whispered, her hands like ice. "What if he doesn't like me? What if he's angry?" "Just speak from the heart, Ba," King said, his own heart hammering. He clicked, "Start call." The screen buffered, and then a face appeared. A face. He was in his 50s. He was sitting in a